I am less foxy and more sloppy. Andrew, and this is Gayties Toys. So, the very first MIA 80s Ladies was about one of my favorite characters amongst this batch, and that would be Jenny from Bucky O'Hare. So, it stands to reason I had to close the loop and do Mimi LaFloo, sometimes misspoken as Mimi LaFleur. She would be a very tertiary character, but a very important character had the series continued. As a bit of a refresher, Bucky O'Hare was created by Michael Golden, legendary comic book artist, one of my faves, and Larry Hama, who's probably best known for writing G.I. Joe comics, file cards, the whole concept, really. Bucky, as a comic, wouldn't come out until 1984 under Continuity Comics, which is about as independent as it gets. That said, the intention was clearly toys. The character designs all had belts with giant pegs on them that were intended to clip plastic guns or weapons onto them. So the franchise of it all was baked into the ingredients. That said, toy companies weren't terribly interested in Bucky at the time. They were sort of much more, looking to compete with Star Wars, which, sort of took up all the oxygen in the first half of the 80s. By the time that, late 80s hit and Ninja Turtle fever really hit, suddenly anthropomorphic animals on adventures became the hottest of tickets. So Hasbro finally jumped on board and started producing Bucky O'Hare toys in 1992, as well as a very short-lived cartoon series. The cartoon started off with a very basic retelling of the very short-lived comic book series from 1984. However, they did have enough time to expand, particularly when it came to the characters. The comic was really, cut short, but it seems that, during all that time, Golden and Hama had, opportunity to create a lot of characters, a lot of setup, a lot of story that, had Bucky O'Hare really took off like so many other, Ninja Turtle ripoffs, essentially, they would have gotten to. And one was, of course, Mimi, who we'll talk about today. Before we get to Mimi, there is sort of a little backstory needed. In the continuity of the show and the comic, Bucky's ship was the fleet for the mammals. Essentially, it was a fleet of one. The Righteous Indignation was solo against this Toad Empire, this just huge, imperial-esque Star Wars empire. They were eventually joined in the cartoon by Commander Dogstar's ship, the Indefatigable. Try saying that twice. Still wildly, undergun kind of thing. But with the inclusion of Mimi, we did finally get a third, constituting a fleet. As for Mimi, she first appeared in Home Swampy Home when Bucky O'Hare finally decided to take the, battle back to his home planet, who had been under Toad occupation. He met Mimi while she was pretty much the only fox, in the rabbit house, as it were. She was really railing against Bucky, this legendary hero who was supposedly going to come and save them. She was, much more pragmatic, much more trying to take care of things herself. It wasn't until Bucky actually showed up and did help the, people of Warren rise up that she sort of did come to respect him. By episode's end, she did get a promotion as the commander of her own ship, Screaming Mimi. The end of the episode also sort of set up another relationship dynamic, let's say. She had certainly, come around on Bucky, very hard, very aggressive, very horny. Meanwhile, Bucky's other paramour, who he did not know anything about, Jenny, was watching on. And while the two women never really, interacted on the show, it was pretty clear, if not very stereotypical, where that, rivalry was going to go. All of this is to say, however, that we as an audience are unsure of what to think about Mimi, or what the writers and creators wanted us to think about Mimi. So in one case, she was very assertive, very anti-Bucky, very, trying to do things herself. In a sense, it was almost like a Princess Leia kind of archetype in that way. And if you are a Star Wars fan of a certain age, who remembers what the fans treated Carrie Fisher and the character like originally versus the, the veneration she has now, the word space bitch, people hated Princess Leia. You know which fans they are. And so whenever you call a character assertive, it's code for space bitch. On the other hand, Mimi was, when presented new information, changed her opinion and, went a different route. She had the capacity to grow. Likewise, very clear she was meant to be Bucky's love interest. She was the end game in terms of Bucky's romantic future. So it's a weird thing where they're like, we want you to kind of, not like her, but also like you need to like her because she's going to be very important to Bucky in the future. So there's a lot of like push and pull there. And likewise, I mean, she was a rival of sorts for Jenny, who we did like a lot. We had a lot more invested in Jenny. She was in every episode. She was a core character on Bucky's crew. So a lot of mixed feelings here. This notion is even further cemented for those who are like, no, it's Bucky and Jenny forever. Jenny was in fact intended to get over Bucky and end up with Pit Stop Pete, one of a few dog characters. And that was the big shtick, is that a cat and a dog got together. What do the children think? As for a toy of Mimi, this may have been in the future. It may have been on the table at some point, but clearly never happened. We do have a lot of information of what was planned. We have a lot of diagrams, a lot of prototypes, a lot of, just stuff that just leaked out into the world. And so we've got a pretty full picture of what was going to happen wave 2, wave 3. Beyond that, we don't know. Of course, there were images of Mimi kind of floating around. She was designed by Michael Golden, but it's not, 100% sure whether or not she would be in toy line even wave 4, 5. We don't know. We just don't know what her plans were. Much like Jenny, this is actually a good news final verdict. So, as I mentioned before, in 2017, Boss Fight Studio picked up the license for Bucky O'Hare and created not all the characters, but a great many. One of them was, of course, Jenny, plus a variant, but most importantly, one of their last ones was Mimi LaFloo. I will maybe not take credit for this, but I do recall early in their webcasting days where they were sort of saying, hey, we've got Bucky, what would you like to see? And I was the one in the chat, flying the coop, saying, we need Mimi LaFloo, and they were like, who the? So, you're welcome. Not to say, I created this, I manifested this, but I will say too, I mean, as much as I have conflicting feelings about Mimi being such a Jenny fan, it's a fantastic figure. Just front to back, great, posable, sassy, love her. The figure itself has done a lot of heavy lifting and turning modern around, in my opinion. So, Boss Fight, if you're watching, if you're listening, please God, get that license back. I mean, more, please, please, please. And that's a wrap on the MIA 80s ladies for Bucky O'Hare. There's really only the two women worth talking about, but that said, they are both fantastic characters. Maybe a little tropey in their relationship, but I mean, great figures. That said, I wouldn't mind having vintage-inspired figures if someone wants to go ahead and do that for me. That'd be great. Any customizers, call me. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. If you would like to like, comment, subscribe, that would be a huge help. And I will see you next time on MIA 80s Ladies.